Hello and welcome to the Brazilian BA guest. Today I have a friend from Slovenia, my friend Andrej Guštin. How do I pronounce her name? You just teach me a second ago.
Yeah, it's Andrej Guštin.
Guštin. Thank you, Andrej, for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be your guest today. So I hope we will spend, a very useful and funny time together.
Oh, we certainly will. I have a good question for you. And the question is, how to expose data as storytelling?
Oh, a difficult and very interesting question. Usually when you formulate the question, how to expose data in a storytelling, you put data in the first place. But when, let's say, a year or two ago, I met data storytelling as a business analysis technique. And I always put that as a question. What was the first, data, story, or telling? And the history told us that the first thing that the human beings were able to share among them was story, not telling, because they were not able to tell different, I don't know, languages or what was in that time, but they paint on the wall. They paint stories about the hunting, about the animals, etc. And then the telling comes. So we were able to communicate with each other and so on. And probably I think that the two guys were the ones who actually exposed data as the most important thing to not to define, but to explain the world about around us. One was probably Isaac Newton, who said, okay, all the principles about the mathematical things should be based on the data and on the observation of different planets, moon, the apple and the tree, and so on and so on. And if you open that book, I don't know the original, but it's something like the philosophy of mathematical principle. You will see a lot of different BA techniques inside that. And the second guy was probably Charles Darwin with, his explanation of development of the species. It's not the strongest one, but it's the one that is most adaptable to the changes. And again, if you open that book, he tell a story about the data, about the birds, about the trip with the beagle, the boat on the Galapagos Island, and so on. And probably they were the first one using data storytelling to tell us that the world is a little bit different than we thought at that time. So as you formulate the question, how to expose data in a data storytelling, I think that the data should be exposed in an appropriate way. And I will put IIBA core concept model into that, into that formula. So the data will somehow explain us the context. They will explain probably the need and the value of the stakeholders, because the data should present probably the value for the stakeholders in any kind of the solution, whatever the solution should. And of course, the data can be related with the change. So we as business analysts can expose data, can use data in every single corner of that core concept model. But the basis of exposing data in storytelling is to define and to tell the story according to all the principles that apply for telling the stories. And let's say during the discovery I did behind the data storytelling, I read a lot of books, and I will say that half of them I usually focus on visualization of the data. And I will tell honestly that even if you have a very good visuals and present them in PowerPoint or Word document, this is not storytelling. The storytellings begin as a story, as a fairy tale. Usually it has 8 different steps that you have to somehow defined, and you have to formulate the story according to those basic principles. And the theories usually help you to define that structure based on the result. It means that that's useful when you have to present, let's say, the business result by the end of the year or month. The way you tell the story with positive result is not the same to the way how you tell the story with negative result, of negative consequences coming out of that. And if you don't know that, you will tell all the stories in the same way, and that will affect the audience differently, probably differently than you expected. And that's probably not what you want to do. But I will go even further in that, thinking that the major thing how to expose data in data storytelling is to not to tell what data shows us, what visuals shows us on the page, on the screen, but to tell what's behind, what is the context of that data, what is around the data, and what might be useful for the stakeholders to as a conclusion or recommendation to get out of that data. What is the most common mistake is when you present the data, that you are talking about the data, not about the things behind, the consequences and so on. And as an example, let's say on our lessons and workshops, I always put a question: who wrote the shortest story ever and got rewarded, got a reward for it? And it was Ernest Hemingway, and the story is actually 6 words long. If you Google it, you will find it immediately. And the story goes the way I will read it for you. Just for sale, baby shoes, never worn. If you read it for the first time, you will probably not understand what's behind. And in the article that explains how Hemingway wrote the story, you will find the context of that story, which happened in America, I don't know, in 20th century, that a very young baby died due to illness, something like that. And the parents did the garage sale and sold everything what they have. And among the things they sold was also the baby shoes, which were never worn. So Hemingway, on a very beautiful way, shows us that don't tell things that the audience already know. That is the context that the audience are familiar with. So we as a BA, as a business analyst, are the only one who can probably understand the audience, who know all the preferences, all the assumptions. If you just take the babok and see what are the techniques can you use for the stakeholder analysis, you will see that for data storytelling, you need to understand the audience. And we as a BA should do that on every single project, every single meeting, or whatever is our goal. So just to answer shortly how to expose the data and data storytelling is not only do not expose only the data, expose the story that data told us, and expose it in a way that it is the most, how to say, understandable for the audience. Less is more. Don't put a lot. On our workshop, we usually we take the Excel sheet with 100 columns and thousands of rows, and we said, okay, can we generate something like a very simple graph or a very simple diagram? Even one number can be enough to tell the story behind that table. So less is more. Less is more. Don't complicate. Focus on the let's say in the data storytelling workshops, focus on the insights that you can get out of the data, and explain and spend most of the time on preparing the story, finding the backgrounds, finding all the the hook that will engage the audience to listen your story. Build your own skills, build your own reputation as a speaker, as a presenter of the workshop.
I thought I got some very interesting ideas from what you said. How important it is not for us to show the data. The data may be shown in a picture, but to explain what's not being on the visuals, like presenting some graphic is not telling people, oh, there's a big bar here and a small bar here. That makes no sense. People can see that, but you have to expose what's behind that. And I like it very much when you said about using the business analysis core concept model to find all the important or the core concepts behind a story. That's very interesting. And you mentioned that you have a workshop to explain people to do that. How is this workshop and how can people have access to that?
Thank you for that question. So inside, let's say, IIBA chapter here in Slovenia, we are trying to share the knowledge we have and the experience we have with different audience here in Slovenia, and also on the, let's say, on the international level, with like design thinking workshops. I think that you participated on one. Unfortunately, it was done via Teams or Zoom on BBC last year. So the experience was not the same as on face-to-face workshops. But what we did, so we usually use different canvases. We even play with Lego bricks and Lego serious play. So we try to engage people to solve the real problems they have at their work or at home in a private life.
And where can people find you to make those kind of workshops, or to just chat and change information with you?
I mean, our IIBA chapter has its own web page as all the chapters in Slovenia. I have my LinkedIn profile. I'm quite common on it, so we can chat via LinkedIn or Facebook on any other.
I will add those both addresses here below this video so people can check the Slovenian chapter and can check your account and make a connection with you on LinkedIn. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. All the best to you and Brazilian BA chapter.
Thank you.
And stay safe in that time.
Thank you. I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, thank you very much.